Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new episode of the X Button. My name is Alejandro, one of your hosts, and with me is my always lovely non gaming t shirt wearing.
Paul. Hey everyone.
How you doing, Paul?
I'm doing well, Alejandro. It's been a week, hasn't it?
It really has been a week, but before we dive into any craziness, how you doing, Paul?
I'm doing well, and now I'm much brighter, so that helps
That
as
was
well.
that was smooth. Why
I
did
was
you
just waiting for
what?
the
Yeah,
dramatic reveal.
yeah. Why didn't you do that before we started recording?
See, I thought I did, and then when I turned on the other light, I realized that this one wasn't up as high as it needed to be. So I did that as soon as I could when I realized it.
That's awesome. So yeah, Paul, what's new with you?
I I've been very drained actually because do you ever have that moment where you have a boss that thinks that you're more capable than you actually are? So they give
Yeah.
you these crazy, impossible tasks. That's currently what I'm at right now, and it's not anything fun like a creative sort of project. So
Mm-hmm.
it's he handed me a machine that I have never seen before in my life, and he said, "All right, I need you to program and fix this, and then give it to somebody that is paying us." And that pressure hasn't been great.
Yeah.
And
Did he give you a deadline at all?
yeah, it was like literally as soon as you can get this finished, and so I did that, and things did not go well at
Mm.
the place of business. So I have to tell him after we're done with this recording that it didn't go well, and I have to figure out a plan to fix it.
Okay.
So it's been a fun week leading up until today. So we're gonna figure that out.
That's awesome.
I know it's horrible, frankly, but that's why we have gaming to make us feel
That
better about
Hey, that's why
things.
always need an escape, right?
That is very true.
Yeah, it lives for a little bit before we dive in back into the nightmare. Uh
Really though.
yeah, for me, just still going on hikes. Actually, my whole family, with the exception of my brother, are going on hikes now. It's pretty cool. We found like a really cool park that's way bigger than we ever anticipated.
Oh,
That's like close to our home, and like every day that we have gone on these hikes, we always take different trails. And you okay? Yeah,
yep,
yeah. I was
yep.
like, you're staring. I was like, did something happen?
Oh, I was just trying to make sure that I got this right
Oh,
while
okay.
you were talking.
Okay. Yeah, I was like, yeah, I have to make sure we don't get technical issues. But yeah, we just keep going on these different walks and different adventures, basically, and it's so like relaxing to always take like different trails and feeling like you're going to the unknown. And I'm like, oh, this reminds me a lot of Death Stranding.
Oh Lord,
Oh, yeah, and
I've done those a few times.
yes, and it's like cool. It's like probably the most like working out to me has always been it has always been like yeah. Never has been anything that I'm always looking forward to, even though it's so good for us.
Hmm.
But working out through a hike, it's so good. It's like so relaxing. It's like you literally work your entire body just like climbing and managing your terrain and all of that. And then I feel like I sweat like a pig, like afterwards. And
How far do you have to like go to get into like a good hike area? Do you just go from your house, or do y'all drive somewhere?
we drive to the park. It's like
Okay.
5 minutes away.
Okay, well that's good then.
Yeah, and then with do you like pay like a? It's like a park. You can pay like a membership because they charge you for using the parking spot is like $1 during the day during the week, and then $2 in the weekend. But then you can pay $15 membership, and you can go there as long as you want.
And it's like a forest, right? Like
Yeah, it's like a
okay.
forest. So, yeah,
Cuz
it's a.
when you said park, I was like thinking a park in a city like where
Mhm.
I live, and then you were talking about hiking and I was like, "Oh shoot, that's
Yeah,
very different."
it's a park near a forest with hiking trails. It's
Oh,
really
that's
cool,
awesome.
and we never take the same trail every day. Even though eventually we're gonna run out of like ways to like be creative. Just the fact that there's so many, it's I my biggest struggle is always doing the same thing over and over again. I have like a very big OCD-ness into always trying to change things up. In fact, that happens to me with gaming also. That's why like I always have to play many things at the same time or even in different days. I can't always be playing the same game over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
unless I really enjoy it, because then like my mind starts getting bored of just the repetition of things. So it's weird applying that into real life. So that's been cool, and finally getting to like I'm seeing the results because I'm wearing shirts that were like so tight, and now they're
Yeah.
feeling a tiny bit looser, not super loose. So, but I know things are going. So Paul, now speaking on escaping, what have you been playing?
Yes. Well, I actually re-downloaded. Well, wait. I don't know if did I talk about Battlefield last time?
Yeah, you mentioned that
Okay.
you
So
redownload Battlefield 4 and 5, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So I played a little bit more of that, and then I also started the Final Fantasy remake again on the PS5 to see
And
how gorgeous that is.
you're playing it in now in 4K, right?
Yeah. Well, sometimes I'm still playing on my computer monitor, which is where I am right now. But whenever I
Mhm.
can, I go over to my TV to just like revel in the gloriousness. My problem is, I don't know if you saw the Twitter post that I made about having
I
a
mean, a
video
million
game,
different things. Yeah.
like two shows
Yeah.
and the podcast rolling. So I'll do that with like a show on one screen and then my game on the other, just so I can like get the gist of whatever is going on in the show washing over me while I'm doing my game.
Hmm.
But then Final Fantasy just sucks you in so much that I'm like, shoot, I can't have this thing. I got to pause it and I got to focus on what's happening with the story,
Yeah.
because my goodness, it's so beautiful.
It's
It's
like,
so
remember
gorgeous.
when we played the demo like last year
Oh yeah.
before the world went to hell, and how we
Uh
were
huh.
just so impressed with how beautiful it looked? When you actually looked at the PS5 version and then look at how the PS4 version actually looked,
Yeah.
it's incredible to like always have the benefit of hindsight and seeing how grimy some things actually are, but because of the first initial shock of beauty, we don't realize any flaws that are exposed when you actually see something better. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel that's what happens with the PS5 version of Remake. It's a
It's it
it's
is just mind blowing, like you were saying. Just the
Games shouldn't look this
smoothness.
beautiful. It's like it should be illegal for games to look, because even Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, it's also a game that's like, how can games be this beautiful? It's like this should be illegal.
And it's a perfect blending of the realism but also a very specific character design style, because you know how like some things some things that we've been talking about recently are very focused on realism and it just doesn't look right when you put it into a video game. But then when you create
Strangers of
something with
Paradise.
yeah, right. And when you create a specific design and you just execute on that design really well, it looks better than something that is quote unquote hyper realistic.
Mhm.
Um, and I would say that even now, Final Fantasy VII Remake looks way better than things that have been released or even announced since then to come out
Mhm.
in the future, just because it executed so well on that and had so much polish with it.
It's so thoughtful in its art design. It's so thoughtful in its character design and its composition. It's so thoughtful in how everything fits in that world. That's why, yeah, I coughed about Stranger of Paradise, which by the way, like it has been more than a month. It's been like a month and a half now since we saw that trailer at E3, and I can't stop thinking about it. Whenever I'm feeling down, I always look back at that trailer, and I'm always laughing, like crying, laughing by the fourth time he says chaos. But by the
Chaos.
time he's like, we hit the shrine of chaos, and just
We're here to
because
kill chaos. I have to kill chaos.
and just because I think that, and just think of you hating
Yeah,
it, and that makes me laugh at even it makes me laugh even more about that.
man.
So
I do want to move on to one other game, but
mhm,
last thing I wanted to say about Final Fantasy is just how well the idea of the character design worked from like the PS1 era, because they had such a limited amount of space that every little part of their polygons and the shapes, the little triangles that you saw, did to show the characters when they're like this little bitty thing right off in the
mhm,
distance of a matte painting background, and then how well that translated to now, as opposed to some other things that just really got muddied. Even other Final Fantasy characters, like your Final Fantasy 12, which just kind of looked muddy with its
mhm.
browns, and 13, I would say, did a really great job. but and then you're 15 with your boy band troupe.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
yeah, so
yeah, 15 is the one where it's like some of the art feels a little out of place because of the mesh of different styles of time, like the more old-timey medieval stuff fixed with more modern takes and things and just how
which
it's
they
smushed
had a
together.
really great mix of it in like the initial release trailers, and it
Hmm.
was very hyper modern, and then they kind of like pulled back from that,
Hmm.
where like Insomnia itself is really hyper realistic and futuristic, and then the rest of what you actually play is like very retro looking, which I get because it's more rural,
Hmm.
but it did have a bit of a disconnect in the execution. But I don't know if you ever watched the movie of that,
Bro,
Kingsglaive.
Kingslave, it's I like
Clean.
it. People hate it,
It's
but
it needed to be incorporated into the actual game, I think,
yeah,
and to add context.
and that's the thing. They kind of did like
They
because
tried to, but it
yeah,
was a
they tried
clip
to,
show
yeah,
for like
with
10
no sound
seconds.
and with no sound.
Yeah, that was that was wild. I can only imagine somebody playing the game and watching clips of that being like, "Where is this game? Like,
Yeah.
what happened to that?"
Yeah, that's what made it interesting when I played 15 because I played it when it came out and beat it. But then
Yeah.
the Royal Edition was released and they gave me an upgrade path, so I played it again. And that's when I played it with all the updates that I added, like the change to Chapter 13, them incorporating the
Oh yeah.
Kingsglaive, incorporating Kingsglaive clips into specific story moments to really like emphasize why things happening are so important.
Yeah.
And it made me realize, man, like already know that game was already troubled by itself. I mean, it was announced in 2006 and released in 2016, so
Hmm.
like in any way shape that you can like paint it, even though it had to restart development, I was like, that game had an incubation period of 10 years and it's still released like so. It felt like
Man.
they took it out of the oven almost too soon. But then the episodes that they released afterwards, the boss rush mode they added near the end, that was very Kingdom Hearts esque. Like you
Hmm.
know how like at the very end of Kingdom Hearts is just boss
It's
after boss
just
after boss after boss
yeah,
before the before like the end. So
and God forbid you decide to quit out and then come back to it, because then you have to redo all of it, because that the last time you saved was at the first boss.
I mean that was a problem in the first Kingdom Hearts. I remember.
Yeah, I
Uh,
played the second one enough to know that that was also a problem there, because it was four bosses,
mhm,
and if you like, I mean, if you died, you could replay that boss, but if you had to quit or leave or turn off the system for any
mhm.
reason, you were
Yeah.
done.
Before we keep going down this
Yeah.
Kingdom Hearts Final Fantasy Hall, what's the other game they were playing? They.
Oh, the other one was oh, I played Ghost of Tsushima. I put a little bit of a
Mhm,
spin on that to see what it felt like in PS5 again, and to see it
mhm,
on the 4K TV, because I didn't have this when I had Ghost of Tsushima.
mhm.
And
Yeah, because you
then
got it after until you got Cyberpunk, right? It was on
yes,
because it was you got PS5 in November, you got
that's
that TV in
correct. Yeah.
December, and you were no longer playing Ghost. Huh?
And then I was on the critical mode, I think they called it,
Mm-hmm.
the one where you, like, everyone dies in two or three hits.
Hmm.
And I remembered having a lot of trouble when I tried revisiting it, because it was just the controls were like I had to get used to it again.
It's a hard game to go back to. It's so
It
weird. It's
was.
like it reminds me also a lot of Horizon. If you haven't been playing for a while, it takes a while for like everything to re-click into
Well,
place.
because your muscle memory is in different areas, but then like R2 is to get on a horse, and then you have your weird methods of like, okay, well, if you hold the right trigger here, you can
It's for
pull
the
up some
stances. It's
things.
like the stances.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then like L1 is guard, but L2 is to
It's
pull up your
bow and
throwing
arrow. Yeah.
items.
Hmm.
And then I've like hit R1 to pull up stuff and accidentally like thrown a sticky bomb at my horse and stuff.
Hmm.
It's tricky, but needless to say, it's fantastically gorgeous. It plays just as well as I remember it playing. It loads slower than it did on the PS4, which that makes sense because it wasn't really optimized for the PS5, I guess. Because you remember I was telling you it took me like 3 seconds to fast travel somewhere, and it actually takes a little longer.
That's
Um,
Do
yeah,
you have the game installed
I
inside, or do you
do.
have it? That's
It
weird. It should be faster.
That's what I'm wondering, if it's like just not optimized the best for PS5. Maybe it's actually taking longer to do. But it took me a little bit longer to like load into things. I mean, like if I died, it's very quick, but if I'm
Mhm.
fast traveling for some reason, it takes a little longer. Not a huge deal, but I thought it was something worth noting.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah,
I have it installed in one of my external hard drives, so I'm gonna test that out just to see because it should be faster, like not the other way around.
that's what I would think.
Now, Paul, like it already looks incredibly beautiful, right? It runs
Hmm.
so well at 60 frames,
Yes,
right?
it really does.
What are the upgrades for? The $10 upgrade that they're upcharging if you want to have like a PS5 version of that game. It's I don't get it.
I don't
Like
either.
I literally don't get it. Like
I mean,
I'm
maybe
when
it
it's
was more optimized in some way.
yeah,
I don't see what the difference would be.
I understand the whole Japanese lip sync. I understand them adding haptic feedback and the adaptive triggers that takes some work, especially if
Now,
you want to do it right.
is the Japanese lip sync, is that just the PS5 version or was that the director's cut?
That's the PS5 version that you only get with the director's cut. So
Okay, but I feel like the only reason for the upgrade would be for the Ikishima
yeah, and that's the thing. It's just 20. If
expansion.
you just want Kishima, it's $20. You can play Kishima as is just by paying $20, and it
It
automatically turns the game into the director's cut. But if you
okay.
want the director's cut on PS5 with PS5 enhancements, it's the extra $10. I don't understand
Oh,
why they
okay.
went
Because
down
see,
this
I'm
route.
still
Yeah,
confused
yeah,
about what you get with each thing.
yes,
Because it doesn't show up on the PlayStation Store.
yeah.
It's
You still can't upgrade until it comes
right.
out on the day of. Because
Which
if
I
you
feel
pre-order
like
right now, it's gonna charge you $70. So don't do that.
maybe that's what they're
Like,
trying to get people is like, oh, I wasn't paying attention to all the news. I'm just gonna
oh,
buy this next version or whatever.
yeah.
But
And then
yeah, that's me.
I won't feel sorry if you get gypped that way.
I know, right?
So and there was this other game that was free to play for a weekend.
Oh yeah, I've
Yeah,
already kind of scrubbed that from my mind.
yeah,
Yeah, I played Marvel's Avengers for like
yeah.
3 days,
Uh-huh.
and
And you only got
that
halfway through the
was
campaign, right?
I did. There was actually when I turned on the game. I guess it was because it was still technically on. I
Mm-hmm.
got to finish the level that Black Widow got introduced on.
Mm-hmm.
But then finally, after like I finished something, it was like, "Hey, so thanks for trying it. If you want to keep playing,
Buy it.
yeah, buy it." But it was really funny because it had a dialogue box up that froze the game. But if
Uh-huh.
you hit X, you could like kind of move for a second, and then it would pull back up. So I was like, "Am I gonna be able to play this game?"
If you
So I
game the
would
system.
mash X
Uh-huh.
and try to run, and she would like get like a second of movement before it would keep pulling up, and eventually I decided to get out of it. But it was really funny that I was like, can I still fight while I'm doing this?
Mm-hmm.
And
So
it was entertaining.
impressions. What are your impressions of the campaign of what you played, Ron?
So like I was telling you, I think the story is really great. Troy Baker crushes every scene he's in.
Right?
He
He's
adds
such a great
this
Bruce Banner.
subtlety to Bruce, immensely amazing at I mean, it makes sense because this guy's very used to feeding off of small girl characters that
Mm-hmm.
are impressionable and need protecting sometimes.
What did I tell
And
you that his interaction with Kamala Khan is like a variation of the Joel and Ellie thing without the
yeah,
cursing.
just a lot better at like both because of his experience and also because it's a much more lighthearted story.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yeah, she Kamala Khan lost a lot of stuff, but it was more like a scare to her rather than,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I lost my family or anything. It's like her family's fine. It's just she's being hunted. And
How do you like playing as her when she's little and going through the Avengers convention?
I at
The
first I was like, man, I'm gonna hate this, and then after a while, it started to grow on me because it was
Mhm.
like I started putting myself into her shoes, and I was like, oh, it's freaking Thor, dude!
Right.
Oh my gosh,
I feel that that scene works so well
it
because you
does.
think about it, just being a little kid, you're actually going to meet your heroes, and
Hmm.
like when she meets Captain America, like
I
after standing up for the bully, and he's
yeah,
just there, and
and
meeting.
I picked up on her quote in that line. I was like, oh, I see what they're doing. That's clever.
Mhm.
All right, and then just everything with seeing all of the different characters and how like Black Widow's kind of standoffish, but everyone else is pretty nice to her overall. And um
Do you
I
manage to get over the fact that the characters don't look like the MCU counterparts?
I
I feel
have.
they grow on you. It's like eventually you forget that they're the great value
Yeah.
version of the
Captain
MCU one.
America still, I would say, looks the most
What?
like generic,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know. Maybe they polished. I know they said they polished them up after the beta,
Mm-hmm.
because it didn't bother me once I started it up. I was like, okay, I get the idea. They don't look weird anymore. They look like the specific art style that they've chosen, which is like mostly realism, but with just like a hint of style. Which I can respect that, because one to one, it's so rare to get actual realism like we established. But
Mm-hmm.
like if you just add a little bit of style to it, a little bit of caricature, you've got it. And I think they just did the least with Captain America on that one.
Yeah. Now, quick question because you
Yeah.
played the free version. Do you know if they gave you the actual PS5 version or were you playing the PS4 version?
I want to say it was the 5, because it was installed on my hard drive for
Okay.
the main hard drive.
Okay.
So I think they gave me the 5.
Mhm. Did it look pretty?
And
Because I think that
oh, it
game
was
looks
gorgeous.
looks pretty. Yeah.
I will say I agree with the criticism that it just gets to be way too much sometimes in
Hmm.
battles, because I'm mashing buttons at a certain point, because I'm just like,
Hmm.
I don't even see what's going
Yeah,
on.
it's
I
too many
can't.
explosions.
Like the camera's too close almost, which I never thought I would complain about.
Hmm.
But for that level of bombastic action, like I understand why your Marvel Ultimate Alliances
Hmm.
will have that zoomed out,
Hmm.
because you almost need that to see what is going on around you.
Yeah.
Same thing with like Devil May Cry. You pull it back for any
Hmm.
of those bombastic action kind of type games.
Now, as you're playing like a character like Kamala and just chaining the combos and all that, do you understand what I was mentioning? That at a certain point, it can get a little Devil May Cry-esque with the way that you can
I
like
can
chain
understand,
things.
because I wasn't playing as her in the beta, which is
Hmm.
why I wasn't really thinking that. But she has the most versatility of like, okay, well, I can hold
Take
the
him
square
up. Hmm.
to do the up button. I can do the
Hmm.
hold heavy to strike down once I've done that.
Hmm.
And I was definitely getting into it. Um, there's some that are better than others.
What do you
Like,
think of Iron Man?
I do like Iron Man's, honestly,
How do you
because
like his intro? Like his like after when you go to find him
oh, I love it. Because
building your suit.
I mean, he's silly just enough, but he's bouncing off of like each character kind of comes into that scene with like a different motivation, because Bruce is more like trying to offload Kamala. Kamala's just trying to be like, let's get the band back together, and
Hmm.
Tony's got a very like justified reason for hating Bruce.
Hmm.
But then I with all of the really cynical takes on superheroes lately, I'm just really glad to see one that's genuine
Optimistic.
again.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
optimistic. It's like, oh yeah, you know what? This optimistic girl is right. We're gonna get the band back together. We're gonna save the world. It wasn't actually us that did this. Because like I'm just tired of it. I think people at first it was a cool tape. It was deconstruction, and I think those are important to get the new wave and a new level of genuineness in your storytelling. And I think people got a little too into that idea of like, oh, what if superheroes were evil? And
Hmm.
what if they were jerks? And after a while, I'm just
The
like,
Batman
guys,
v Superman problem. Yeah.
there's a reason why they're heroes in the first place, because we just want that out of these big larger than life creations, because in reality we don't get that. That's the point.
Yeah, that's why I said when Avengers came out last September and I started playing the campaign that I was like, "Oh my god, this story is what I needed," especially
Yeah,
with the year that we had in
and I remember you
2020.
were saying that.
And I'm glad that that still resonates even now. And that's the strongest part of that game.
Mm.
And I'm hoping eventually like I'm hoping they do another free weekend so I can actually finish the campaign because I feel like there's some really great moments to play later on where from where you left off that I wish you can actually experience
Hmm.
because I think you can see from its campaign you can see you played the Tomb Raider games from Crystal Dynamics, right?
Yeah,
You can see a lot of the Tomb Raider in it.
I do.
Maybe not
I
as
very
polished in
much do.
some parts, right?
Yeah,
So
I can feel like the mechanics are there though.
mhm.
Is it the same engine?
Yeah, they use
Okay,
the
because
exact same
that's
engine for
it feels like that. And I was like, why did like this feels familiar but also weird.
mhm.
So that makes sense why that's the case.
Yeah, I still stand that that game at its current state, especially with this campaign, it's good. It's
Yeah.
like a 7.5/8. If you were like, depending on where you want to
hmm
do it. Anything else that you've been playing, Paul?
that was really it. I had a couple things here and there, but nothing that I can like
Yeah.
pull up right off the top of my head.
All
So,
right.
what about you?
I also played a lot of Avengers
Yep.
because even though I already owned it, this weekend also they gave. You know how sometimes multiplayer games are like, log in this weekend for double the XP. Avengers was like, double. What if
For
we make it quadruple XPs? So Avengers is like interesting in that because I love the campaign, but I'm always been a little bit more mixed about its whole games as a service slash Destiny component to it with like its loot game and all of that, and it can be a little overwhelming because there's so much to it.
yeah.
Probably like I don't know how much you dealt with having to change the gear from the characters that you play and seeing the have to level up the characters
I
for the skill points and
took
also
like
the
such a
power.
minimal
Mhm.
like
And you
focus on
probably enjoyed
that.
it more, right?
Yes, I very much didn't want to focus on that. I hit the one with the biggest numbers and said, "All right, send me
hmm
off."
Yeah, which is
Um,
when you hold L2 button or LT if you're playing on Xbox, it automatically equips the highest number, even though,
I remember
yeah.
seeing that, but like I missed it when I was trying to go through the tutorial. So I
Mhm.
was like, I'm just gonna switch it over
Yeah, you know
manually.
how
But
in you know how in Destiny you can have three characters for you to
yeah,
level up and all of that. Avengers had six, and on top of that, they added two more, Hawkeye and Kate Bishop,
oh
all
yeah,
with
that's right.
all with them having to be leveled up to 50 level 50 for the skill points on top of having the gear score. That then back then because as a games as a service already had Destiny, and which by the way the new season's coming in 3 weeks by the way, and
Yeah, it was like the 17th or something, right?
yeah, the 24th. We're getting
24th.
we're getting the stream, and then the new season will launch. That then will take us towards the expansion next year. And because I already had like I already made my bed with if I'm gonna commit to a service game, I'm gonna do it with Destiny more.
Yeah,
And so I only really fully leveled up Captain America after I finished the campaign because by the time you get him, he's the one that got the most upgrades based on like the time spent with him, and near the end,
right.
like you get more of his skills upgraded.
hmm
You also gear starts dropping more for him, so I decided to just main, and he also is really cool to play with like the throwing the shield and all that.
Yeah,
So
I always did like him.
yeah, I only main him and fully got him to level 50 and as high as possible with the gear score. I haven't fully, but then thinking about how long it would take me to level up every single character to level 50, which by the way, when you fully upgrade everyone and with the skill tree, the combat of the game gets transformed beyond what you already play because of all the
Really,
skills, the different skills and different intrinsic abilities that happen when you fully upgrade. Like for example, Hulk. Hulk sucks at the beginning. It's like
he really does.
he really does. Like for a character like him, they made him so weak early on because by the time you fully upgrade him and his rage abilities and all of that,
mm,
you can deck out the skill points for his rage ability to make him close to unstoppable. So I feel like they overcompensated with him because if they made him as strong as you eventually get him to level 50, no one would want to play with anyone else. But it requires a commitment because he sucks early on. It's similar
hmm
to many different characters. Even Iron Man was like whenever you fully upgrade him with all the when he's all decked out with his missiles, his laser, and
hmm
all that, it's like this is really cool playing as him. And
I've
because of
heard he does some crazy stuff with his missiles.
yes, oh, the missile itself. If you make a build where you emphasize range attacks, because there's like percentages at the top that
Right.
tells you how much melee damage can he make, how much range damage, how much defense, how much
Yeah.
heroic power. If you like fully, that's the one of the fun and annoying parts of the gear game is that you can make builds specifically to how you want to deck each character, but the gear is also very RNG, so you have to hope that the piece of gear you get it's
Yeah.
like it has stats specific to one place, and so it can get overwhelming. But the build the build creation of that game is kind of fun. But yeah, because of the four times XP, I played a good 20 hours of that game in Saturday and Sunday. Try just to get Iron Man, Hulk, Black Widow, Thor, and Kamala all to level 50. And I wouldn't have been able to do that without the four times XP. And the service part of that game is still broken. How
Mm.
many times I've had to do a lot of those service missions where it's like clear all the enemies here, and a lot of the enemies are robots that like teleporting. They would
hmm
They would
I
teleport
hate those
outside the map,
teleporting dudes.
and then they would teleport outside the map and not teleport inside. So it's like, well, it's screwed.
Oh
I have to
shoot.
reload. I have to reload the checkpoint. But that was a bigger problem on PS4, that the load times were horrible, like almost a minute and a half sometimes. And in the PS5, it's just like this. So I was like, okay, back to checkpoint. Not
Yeah.
a big deal because now it loads quicker and it loads us to the same encounter. Plus, you can still, every XP you earn doesn't reset, so it intrinsically helped also. And
Oh,
it
that's
only
true.
that only happens if you play online. When you play solo, that never happens. I never had those kinds of bugs.
Hmm.
But you also kind of want to play online with this game because sometimes playing with people and seeing everyone coordinating the supers, they can be pretty cool sometimes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm more excited for the Wakanda expansion that comes out. What day is today? The third. It comes out in 14 days and it's free. So,
Hmm.
and I believe more than anything that after the Wakanda expansion, this game's gonna go free to play. The player count went so high after being so low for so long, like
And
for
there's
so
so
many.
many people like me that are like, "Hey, this sounds cool, but I'm not
Mhm.
going to spend money on this."
Because especially with all the crap that's been talked about it. So
Yeah.
so yeah, that makes sense. And I feel like for the health of the game, they should make go free to play and go the Destiny route whenever they do a meaty expansion,
Hmm.
like Beyond Light did. You pay
Yeah.
for that, but everything else is free with like a battle pass. But
Right.
make the base thing free to get more people in, because I feel like at its core, this game is good. This game is fun, right? There's something to it that
Hmm.
is like, yeah, there's a good core to it, that it's not bad. It's like it's fun,
I think it's
man.
there, but they're going to need a lot more
Cleaning, yeah.
variety.
Oh yes, and
And
they need to clean it up more. But
hmm
there's a good core there. It's like it's not Anthem. Didn't have a good core, so there was nothing to save from. The,
that's true. And
so
I'll say, like, similarly to the way I feel Marvel's Avengers plays out is like Warframe,
mhm,
where it's like you've got your crazy combos and stuff that you can build off that. And I will say, like, when it started, it you had like three options, and that was it.
mhm,
And now you've got encyclopedias worth of information that you can get on that
mhm,
game. And that was a game that I played just about as hard as you did Destiny.
mhm.
And
Now it's so hard to
I
get back in
hope
because they
I
double down
know
into for its hardcore. I feel this is
they,
the point to strike for free to play for Avengers
yeah,
before it gets overly complicated, and on the heels of a very exciting expansion that is Black Panther.
true. And
So
they've got the name recognition as well, so
mhm.
they've got it all going for them. If they double down and work towards making it accessible, I think they've got something there.
There's no game right now in the industry that I'm pulling for it to pull through like this one, because I have been wanting a competitor to Destiny, so I don't just play Destiny.
Yeah,
Because if you have a competitor that's actually nailing stuff, then that means the main dude's gonna work better. It's kind of like when competition breeds the best side of everyone,
yeah,
because then will force you to like step up your game. And Destiny hasn't had that competition because everyone that has come in to challenge him. It's like that Coneheads movie in the arena. Everyone coming here and coming, and then you see heads flying away. It's like everyone just
hmm,
keeps getting killed
yeah.
when facing him. So
This is a weird movie.
yeah. Oh man, can you imagine? We don't have those kind of weird movies anymore. I finished also before I dove straight into my 20 plus hours of playing Avengers this weekend. I finished the Assassin's Creed Odyssey DLC, and I will
Oh
say
yeah,
I invested a good 45 hours
which
playing
is
all of that.
amazing for
That's
the
a full
one
game.
DLC.
Yeah, for with the different episodes, but it's like it tells you it's like that's a game in itself on
Right.
top of the already 80 hours that I played in the thing. And I'll keep saying that for everyone that ever got interested into Assassin's Creed for its modern day segments and the first civilization and all of that, that's your that's your content. Like the how everything ties together with history and makes it make sense as the first civilization, as the actual Greek pantheon, that's where the Greek pantheon was
Came
born,
from.
because
Yeah.
this quote unquote alien creatures
Hmm.
were so grander than life, that then like the people from Greece would consider them gods. So I thought that was like a nice inversion of the Greek mythology, and making it work within
Hmm.
the thing, and how like things like the Medusa, the mythological creatures, are all hologram. They're all holographic images created by the pieces of Eden. They pretend like they exist, but in fact they're just pieces of Eden. So that was fun. The modern day section, not so much. Like that's so funny. Like everything about the first civilization worked in the past. The
Yeah.
story told in the future, rubbish. So buyer beware for that. If you only care about how that makes sense in the past, it's worth playing. Absolutely, absolutely worth playing. But if you want like further advancements, it makes sense that they didn't quite advance much in the future because Valhalla happened, and I don't know where the story goes in Valhalla. So
It's gone nowhere so far, but I also didn't
didn't
get
finish. You didn't
real
finish
talk.
it
I
either.
couldn't even figure out where to go at one point because it told me, okay, find this guy and help him, and that was like all they gave me, and I'm like,
Hmm.
this is such a huge place that I have no idea what you want me to
And you don't
to
do
look
guides,
for.
right? You don't like going looking
I
it up, right?
I don't want to. I will if it's like a specific thing,
Mm-hmm.
but whenever it's like the grander narrative of, all right, go, and I say go where, like
Mm-hmm.
tell me where to go at least to like get lost in. But when you get like too hands off, then I'm like, well, at least like give me a general direction, you know.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
you have directional problems in games. That's been well
it's
documented at
so
this
bad.
point.
And I like I was telling you, even in Marvel's Avengers, there was a point where I got turned around and I was just like, where am I supposed to run now?
Hmm. You press
um,
up in the D-pad, it tells you where.
right? And I when I figured that out, it was great, but then sometimes it wouldn't tell me specifically where. So like I would miss a stairwell and I just run around and it's like, how am I
Hmm.
supposed to go down? You're not telling me how to go down.
Hmm.
So that's just my problem apparently. But yeah, we had some good stuff going on, and I'm hoping that we can keep the ball rolling.
Hmm. Yeah, so that's what I've been playing. And then a little bit that I played, I bought Returnal by Housemark
Oh
because it was
yeah,
on sale and it was for 50. I was like, I'm not sure about getting this for 70, but for 50, I'll buy it right now because I barely have PS5 specific games to play. Played
yeah.
it for like an hour, but then went back to Avengers because I needed to get all the XP bonuses now because that was not going to happen again. Hot take, I don't think I played a third person shooter as tight as Returnal.
Mm,
The movement of that game is stellar. Just the speed at how you move, of how you aim, and how you shoot, and how you like can dodge and all of that. It's like Housemark has always done arcade style games that are super highly responsive, and I'm glad that kind of gameplay translated into a third person shooter like it did Returnal.
yeah.
And it's also weirdly probably outside the Alien Isolation, probably the best example of the Geiger art style made famous by the original Alien and Ridley Scott.
Hmm.
And just like seeing that kind of like monochrome old school alien stuff in a lost world and with its monster designs, it's super like it's super impressive. The game's also tough as balls. Like it's a roguelike. So
Yeah.
I have made the point that I'll probably stream that game because I feel that kind of roguelike that's just so hard. It's gonna be fun for streaming. So
Yeah.
I'm saving it for that. But
Hmm.
yeah, more impressions that in the following weeks. So yeah, that was probably one of the longest what have we been playing in a while. So
I
hopefully
know.
the news is not gonna take too long because there's quite a few, but trust me, they're not as big as you might think. So
Yeah.
Paul, press X.
For some news.
All right, so we got 6 items this week, and the first one is a continuation from last week. Remember, we're talking about the Activision Blizzard mess that was the lawsuit by the state of
Yeah.
California. More things happened since that happened, and
I would be surprised if there weren't.
yes, we're not gonna mention some of the horrible stuff that we saw that remember that they screenshotted here.
Yeah.
That was sent to our group, but big developments that happened was that there was a big walkout that happened by the actual. They basically went on strike. The developers of Blizzard
Hmm.
to basically take a stand over what has been litigated with this lawsuit. But the big thing happened this morning before we recorded. J Allen Brack, the president of Blizzard, that if you ever watch the BlizzCon, he's always that dude with like long hair. He basically went to say nothing whenever the Blitzchung thing happened in 2019, right
Hmm.
before BlizzCon, when they announced Diablo 4 and Overwatch 2 for people to forget about them, that whole mess. Yeah, they announced it via press release. He's leaving, and then he left two people, Jen O'Neill and Mike Ibarra, as now the co-leads of the studio. I think the notable thing about this is that they released this press release. I read it to you before we went to before we came to record, and I'm gonna link it to the description so people can actually read the whole thing. It was a whole lot of nothing. It was like completely. It was a press release that literally said nothing. It was a press release that's the most vanilla thing, saying things without really saying, not really addressing the problem, and basically almost what's the word I'm thinking about? Absolving responsibility from this dude as he's leaving.
Mm.
And after a full week about after we talked about it, how have your thoughts evolved about this whole mess with Blizzard?
Well, I am at the point of when something is this deep rooted, everyone has some responsibility on it, because if they didn't do it, the fact that it's been going on for this long and it's only just now breaking is that there are so many people complicit in that kept their heads down. And I understand fully the problems with speaking up because you can easily be replaced. But when everyone keeps their heads down out of fear of their own jobs, then nothing happens. And that's exactly what we're seeing right here. I I don't like that he's able to leave and just kind of get out of here. I mean, I don't know if that he's going to continue to be responsible in some
Mhm.
way for any of this, or if he's just getting off scot free by that. Because I'm not really that versed in how this works. But if that is the case, that's a really horrible thing to do.
Yeah. Do you see a video that happened at BlizzCon 2010 about a woman that came to one of the panels where this
I
guy
think
was at?
I think I
And
read the re
yeah,
transcript of it.
yeah, how she basically stood up and asked them when they were gonna start making female characters that didn't feel like over sexualized and all that, and they basically laughed her out of the room.
Right.
Like the people at the panel, and he was there. That was in 2010.
Hmm.
So a bunch of the things that were put into litigation last week about the sexism and all of that, just watching that panel makes it clear that it comes from the top. It came from this dude. Like this dude was in some ways complicit for that
Yeah.
kind of culture. So I think that what makes me, especially with how like corporations work, just imagine the kind of compensation this dude is gonna get for leaving. If he was quote unquote, imagine if he was terminated, quote unquote. That
Yeah.
just picture how with how much money he's gonna walk away with, while the rest of Blizzard has to deal with
What he
or
helped
with what yeah, with
create.
whatever this thing goes. And that's it. What's complicated about this kind of stories, because we're not lawyers. It's very hard to really see like what the ultimate ramifications of this thing will be. Once again, I'll link more. I mentioned Richard Hogue, this YouTuber lawyer that really reads a bunch of lawsuits and puts it in layman terms in a way. I'm gonna link more of the things that he made um, when more developments happen after we recorded last week. Plus, I'm sure he's gonna do one about this. So
Oh yeah.
yeah. Now, real quick, Paul, like about like the quote unquote boycott towards Activision Blizzard. I started thinking more like throughout the week after we mentioned, and can we like obviously Activision itself is a horrible company
Hmm.
with its business practices and all that, but is that also, should we put the blame on the devs also, the actual grunt work that makes these games? Should
I
we punish that? Should we punish them by not buying?
see. I am still figuring that full answer out myself. I'm at this point where I'm thinking of it's the time honored statement of, can you separate the artist from the art? And
Mhm.
sometimes you can't, because the artist very much influences the art, and then you see things that make a lot more sense in context.
Like Lucy
um,
Kay back in the
yeah,
Me Too era. Yeah.
a lot of that stuff, a lot of, I mean, if you, pretty much most comedian situations for a certain time, you've got a lot of like media involving children, and then finding out that the creator ended up having some kind of very strange fantasy about it, and suddenly it's like, oh, hey, this all of a sudden makes sense. I don't know if you ever read anything about the Totally Spies situation. There was the animated show that was on Cartoon Network for a long time.
The name sounds familiar, but I don't. I
if
never read
you
any
if you pull
context.
up like a picture of it, you would recognize it probably immediately. It's very like Charlie's Angels, but the art style was like very anime-esque, and it turns out the people that created it had a lot of fetishes that they would create one episode for each one. Everything from like bondage to inflation to very different things, and they would just hide it under the idea of it's like a spy adventure. So y'all can look that up to look that. Like I'm not the authority on it, but
Yeah,
it
do you remember?
exists.
Do you remember back in the PS5 reveal event from June 2020? There was this game called Goodbye Volcano High. The
I don't think I
animated.
remember that.
It was the game that was that felt like Life is Strange, but it was like animated with like fur. It felt like furries, like this weird and anamorphic
I think I
animals with
do.
music. That you revealed to me that the writer of that game was like a writer from Kotaku that advocated for like child pornography or something like that. And
Wow.
and you can listen. We have old episodes from when we recorded the
Yeah,
Xbox
it's like
back in 2020. It's
I
the last one
forget
we recorded
everything
before we
that.
recorded. So that's another case where I remember when I looked at the trailer, I was like, I like the vibe of this thing, of this music, but then you told me about that. I was like, oh no.
Oh, I think
Uh,
I vaguely remember that now. Yeah, I do
yes.
remember that.
So yes, like, can we separate the art from like this art from like a writer that literally advocated for child pornography?
Yeah.
So
So that, like, there's situations, yeah, to kind of go back and make a full circle here. There are situations where you can't, and that kind of sours the art after the fact. But then there's sometimes where people, and especially so many people, created a piece of media
mhm.
that when one or even many end up being burned at the stake for various crimes against humanity, um, that should not also tie itself to the media, but it's also, I think, a case by case basis. Another example, Harry Potter.
Oh
We have
yeah,
the famous, now
J.K. Rowling.
infamous situation with the author, and many not great takes she has had on social media since the
Hmm.
series wrapped up. But something that one of my favorite YouTube channels, Cosmonaut Variety Hour, has said is that there's so many people involved in the creation of the Harry Potter movies that it is unfair to demonize the
Yeah,
movies because of the original creators' statements on things.
and the actors and
Excuse me. Yeah,
prop
the
set designers,
actors,
everyone else. Yeah.
the director, the writers, and there's so much going into that that it would very much limit you if you said, I don't like this creator, I am not going to peruse any of their media ever again. I think we lose a lot as creators when we do that, because I mean, I'm not going to like a lot of writers out there, but I'm still going to
Mhm.
respect what they did for the industry. This is one of those situations that video games are made by so many people that it is almost impossible for all of them to have been complicit in this. I
Mhm.
think,
Absolutely.
yeah, there's situations where I'm sure one of them witnessed something that they kept their head down on. There's situations where people were very creative and made great strides and made great advancements in the engine and the entire industry as a result of it. But um, I would struggle to put off everything these companies have made just because of their actions outside of it. I think there's ways to avoid like buying more into like the microtransactions,
Hmm.
purchasing more of the games. I think taking part in some of them, it depends on what it is, because like you mentioned specifically the Diablo 2 remaster,
Hmm.
and some of the older games? Like, do you just stop playing all the old ones? Do you just stop buying new ones?
Hmm.
I think whatever has already come and gone is all right to play because you can still respect what they did.
Hmm.
I think it becomes a very difficult tightrope walk in the process of purchasing new things because we as consumers can only really speak with our wallets.
Hmm.
But that's at least what I'm thinking about it. Is it's difficult. We do need to be careful about what we purchase from certain companies, but
Yeah,
also I don't think it's a black and white situation. What do you think?
yeah, and it's like I kept thinking about just how much I love Crash Bandicoot 4, how much I love Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 plus 2 just last
All
year,
published by Activision, right?
Activision. And the more I read about this, the big problem surrounding this litigation is the Blizzard side of the company. They're the ones on fire. Like J Allen Brack is from Blizzard, and Blizzard is like the one that I'm like not as in tune to. So it felt easier to me to be like, if Activision would announce like a new Crash Bandicoot game, because I really love Crash, and because they did a really good job with 4, even though that right now everything is like because we talked about Toys for Bob being the latest sacrifice to the Call of Duty altar, even though they kept saying no, we're still here, but we're working on it. But they usually say that, and
Yeah.
you never have. It's like High Moon Studios. We made Transformers, War for Cybertron, and Fall for Cybertron, and the Deadpool game. Oh yeah, we're also gonna be helping with Call of Duty. And then what happened? They just kept working on Call of Duty. Raven Software, they did all
Yeah.
these awesome games until Singularity, and they're like, yeah, we're gonna also be aiding with Call of Duty, and then just staying in Call of Duty. So it's like everything just outside Call of Duty. It's that in the non Blizzard Activision side, I'm like, I feel it's a little bit more fair game because it's the thing. It's again, it's not active. It's not Bobby Kotick. It's not Activision the ones doing the thing. It's like there's different kinds of developers under the Activision umbrella working on these things. It's like it reminded me of like I know a lot of people hated EA, but they love Respawn. Should we boycott Respawn because they're under EA, even
Right.
though Respawn is like an amazing developer by itself?
And then you could
And
also
it's
argue if we had boycotted EA entirely and Respawn, we would not be getting the turn of face that EA
hmm
is now having because by purchasing things made by Respawn under
hmm
EA's banner,
EA's
it
perception
made
has changed.
yeah,
Yeah.
it made EA take seriously single player games again. And
hmm
we've not just seen that as an optimistic standpoint, but we've literally seen them start making more single player, more focus on single player, and now making actual new games in development around this idea.
Yeah, exactly. It's basically like it's said about putting money where your mouth is. I was excited for Blizzard for Diablo 2 Remastered, just in the fact that Vicarious Visions, the guys that did the Insane trilogy and Tony Hawk 1 and 2 remake, they're remaking that, and but because now that's under the Blizzard thing, and I'm like, yeah, that one makes me a little pause of trying to get it right at the start. Maybe I'll
Hmm.
wait, maybe until it's on sale. Like I have the funny thing is that this is where it's funny if you ever the advantage of getting like a physical version of a game. If you buy it used in the GameStop, for example, none of that money goes towards the developer. That money just
Right,
goes
that's
to
secondhand.
yeah, it's just secondhand that just goes straight into GameStop. So sometimes you can be like, I'm not giving. I want to play this game, but I don't want to give these people money, so I'll buy it used. I can't do that because I got a digital console. So maybe I'll just wait for a sale for that one, and I'll wait to hear more or see if by the time they really get their crap together with like restructuring. At the very least, I will say J. Allen Brack leaving. It's a step.
Yeah.
It is a step. It's like at least it's not because he made like literally when the lawsuit happened, the answer that the thousands of employees from Wow like completely boycotted and be like, we don't stand for that. It's like his response under his name was like, the state of California is coming to hunt us. They don't care about the art and all that. It's like it was a weird deflection. And
It's
And
for
it's the
certain things, like that's not the way you respond to something this serious, especially when you have documented evidence
Mhm.
and somebody completing suicide out of the response of it.
Yeah,
That's another level that you
exactly.
can't just ignore that anymore.
Exactly. So because of the way that this dude answered and the blowback they got within the like from inside the company, that they literally the developers like took us. And here's the thing: they went on a walkout. They're not even unionized. Imagine like they
Oh
put their
yeah.
yeah, like the devs that work for Blizzard, they don't have a union protecting them, because when you are under like a work union,
Yeah.
strikes is part of
They
it's
back
allowed for
you
that.
up
They
on it.
back you up on a strike, and they still did it without unionization. So imagine all these devs and this grunt work that put their necks in the line, walking out,
Mhm.
not like working. So that to me is mighty respect. And then again, it's like the big difference between the horrible boogeyman that is the C-suite executives at the top versus the grunt work that makes the games that we love. So seeing all that, that's what made it. Because I'll take full responsibility. I said last week I'm fully boycotting after seeing after now seeing the grunt work that has happened and all the devs that has took a stand for that. It makes me realize that it's a little bit more complicated than that, and I feel like it's I'd rather reward dev work and thinking that I'm rewarding the dev work rather than just the publisher. And that's what's going to make it a little bit more of a gray area that we have to deal with like, this kind of companies. But at the very least, I'll still take a stand that with Blizzard right now, that whatever they release until they get the Blizzard side gets their crap together, I don't have to deal with that. The non Call of Duty side of Activision, if they start releasing more stuff that is just not Call of Duty, since I'm just tired of Call of Duty, more Call of Duty in general, I might still consider that. But gray areas all around.
I I agree, and I think it's going to be difficult to
Yeah,
navigate that. But
and this started because I also saw you didn't put this in the what we've been playing, because I saw before I went to bed yesterday that you were playing Modern Warfare. So I was like, hmm.
and I was
So
just like, so I want to justify that real
yeah,
quick.
I know.
Hang on a second,
But that's what made me think.
because I don't want you throwing me under the bus of our
No.
viewers. I wanted to go back to a game that has been further
2 years
back.
now.
Yeah, 2 years.
That was
And I was
great.
playing the
That was
campaign
great.
for it,
Mhm.
not just like trying to play your war zones
Mhm.
and the multiplayer, which they still care about. Um, because I love the campaign for that. It is very strong. I was trying to go back and I was looking at all my Call of Duties. I was like, I want to play a tight controller, tight
Not
controls,
thinking straight.
FPS.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just
like let's
campaign.
put some good animations, point me at some AI enemies, and then let me go to town. And I was going to download either the first Modern Warfare remaster, the second, or the 2019 Modern Warfare. And that's the one I ended up deciding on because I had actually replayed the other two more recently than that one. And so I was like, well, I really liked it and I remembered it. And now I'm going to go back and try it. And sure enough, it stands up amazingly well. And seeing that compared to Cold War again, like fresh mind, is night and day. Don't worry, I
Cold
only
War's a
barely
step
heard some.
back. Like Cold
It
War,
is,
it's a step
which
back
I
with the
get it
exception of
because
the
it was a
story.
different
Yeah,
developing
developer.
team.
Mhm.
They didn't have time for it. I get that. But it is just so clean with like the motion blur, the movement, and everything. Um, I hope they continue to use that engine moving forward, and I also hope that a lot of this stuff gets cleared up because I don't want to have to boycott it, but I
Mhm.
will, and I will wait to buy it secondhand from a GameStop if I have to.
You bought a
Um,
physical, so you could potentially get it secondhand.
Yeah, and I found out, Alejandro, because we mentioned GameStop, they now have a new policy where if you buy a new game, it used to be that you couldn't return it unless it was in its case. You can now play that game for 3 days and return it for full price.
Hmm.
Did you know that?
Interesting.
Because
I
I found
didn't.
that out. It is on the receipts now. When you buy a new game, you can bring it back for 3 days and say that you didn't like it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
So I could go off and play a game that I like and bring it back and say, "Nope, not for me. Let me get some in-store credit, maybe buy another new game and start the process over."
now I know which one of the two of us is gonna play Stranger of Paradise then. So
I don't know if I will still, but I part of me wants to just for the memes, but part of me
Mhm.
doesn't want to hate
I
myself. So we'll
absolutely
see.
want to play. Yeah, part of me wants to. I still stand like there were so many positive previews of its gameplay
I
that I'm
know.
like, I still want to try it. I'm sad that didn't have my PS5 on time to try the demo, but I think it'll be worth it just for the memes.
Yeah.
So, okay, so that was a number one. We'll blast
Yeah.
through these other ones because they're basically a little bit more simple. Ironically, before the this continuous story of the lawsuit and what happened with J Allen Brack broke, um, this was going to be another sort of PlayStation centric week. Almost like we'd had like
We're
almost a month and a
catching
half
up
ago.
after our
Yeah.
like several weeks of Xbox and
Yes.
Nintendo
Yes.
jumping.
It's just so funny how this how this broke down. So number two, through the PlayStation blog, Sony announced that the PlayStation 5, amidst continuous shortages and excessive demand, has officially sold 10 million units sold. A figure reached around a month earlier than when the PlayStation 4 officially sold 10 million back in 2014. So in context, that was announced in end of August 2014 that PlayStation 4 sold 10 million. 10 million. PlayStation
Okay.
5 did it in July. So this
Which is
continues the
crazy. Like, see, that's what I was telling you. It was just as much of a shortage, and yet then they still sold 10 million.
but it feels there's more demand now. It feels
Yeah,
that the demand wasn't there for the PlayStation 4 like it is here. Like you didn't see as much hand wringing and calamity whenever there's like drops in GameStop or Best Buy or Amazon and everyone. And it
yeah.
will be like, man, it's like I'm so demoralized. I keep trying to log in and it always gives me errors and then it's out of stock and all that. So yeah, to me this just shows that the inertia and momentum of the PlayStation 4, that the PlayStation 5 still has it.
Yeah.
Like they're still riding that wave of popularity.
Despite, as many people have said, it not having any games for it.
Yeah, or as many.
Man, I mean, I would even say all the PS4 games that if you didn't own any of those PS4 games in the last like 4 years that are
Getting
going
to
to
play them
see
on
a
PS5.
huge jump in
Yeah,
PS5,
that's enough.
that's it by itself.
Hmm.
But I mean, I'm not going to just defend the fact that yeah, it doesn't really have any games for it exclusively, but if you count everything else that it's got leading up to that,
Yeah,
then
I
you've got
will.
plenty of time.
Yeah, I will still say that, especially when you compare it to its competition, it actually has more exclusives released from when the system came out in November to like right now
Right.
than the other one. But it makes also wonder how much the PS5 would have sold if they were able to meet demand. Like if they were able to produce these things, if there was no
Oh yeah.
pandemic shortages and all of that. So
I
number
think the
three,
price
yeah,
also helped it. But yeah,
yeah, oh yeah, yeah. The price is relatively the same
it was. But I
in
think
inflation and
compared
all
to
that.
like PS3 era
Oh
is what
yes,
I'm thinking.
and also
Because yeah,
PS. It's just the PS4 was so super popular. Of course, people are gonna have want the follow up if they didn't screw the pooch that big.
and
And technically,
stimulus
the PS.
checks.
Yeah, thanks, Sleepy Joe.
Anyway,
Yes. So number three, on the vein of sales, speaking to Gamesindustries.biz, I'm gonna link it to the article. Sony revealed a pair of sales figures of some of their big exclusive games released so far for the PlayStation 5. Ahead of the pack is Spider-Man Miles Morales, the smaller standalone title from the system's launch, has sold a total of 6.5 million copies. Here's what's funny though. More people bought it for PS5 than on PS4, despite there being 110 million PS4s in the market.
I think part of that is because a lot of people didn't know it was for PS4.
Yeah,
I was
to
one of those.
yeah, to be fair, it's like how it happened was that if you watch the two presentations they made for PS5,
Yeah,
like that the reveal of the console when they
it said
officially
like
announced Miles
also for
Morales,
PS4. I think.
and no, and then the September one where they announced the price and they showed the gameplay demo of Spider-Man Miles Morales. At no point it said available on PS4.
Oh, okay.
They announced that on Twitter. Via Twitter and somebody said we're
Yeah.
proud to announce that it's coming on PS4. And
Hmm.
that goes to show you that sometimes like the Twitterverse, it's not representative of the actual mainstream thing. Also, maybe this is also my tinfoil hat. I think this also proves that if you know there's a game coming to the old system and the new system, maybe there's a psychology in place where you might as well buy it for the new system.
That
also.
definitely hits me. So I will say that it is definitely real when I
Yeah,
think, oh, well, there's a game for the last gen and this gen. It's obviously going to be worse.
look,
Uh,
I mean, I proved that to myself. Like whenever the
right.
PS5, when the PS5 finally came out last November, I did play Miles Morales because I love the first Spider-Man so much. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
at least I get to play this here. But then other games like Immortals, Hitman, Watch Dogs Legion, Assassin's Creed, Valhalla, I'm like, I know there's a better version for this. Even if I buy them now, I can
Yeah.
wait to play them whenever I get the better machine. So I think that psychology does play out. So this makes sense why more people bought Miles Morales on PS5 than on PS4. So, and that's the thing is Miles Morales has been charting on NPD like forever. So other sales figures: MLB The Show 21 also has sold today 2 million units, and specifically Sony mentioned it sold us 2 million on PS5 alone, even though the game's also available on PS4. And interestingly enough, remember this is also part of one of the funniest stories that happened this entire year of a Sony made game that was going to be multi-platform because the MLB demanded them to release a multi-platform game. That game showed up on Game Pass on Xbox.
Mind
So
blowing.
you had to pay $70 for the PS5 version, or you could play for free on Xbox. They said that on next gen they have 4 million players, so 2 million players played it on Xbox through Game Pass.
Wow.
So I would say this is impressive in that Game Pass didn't 100% cannibalize the PS5 like I would have expected it to. Because think you should just think about it. I have the two systems. Where do I want to play MLB 21 if I have both the Xbox Series X and the PS5? Oh
Maybe
yeah,
we want to play
I'm
it on the
gonna
one and you get it for free.
exactly. So I think this just shows that there's commitment from people to buy games still. So
Yeah,
that is a good problem for Sony to have because this could have been a disaster for them. Like because
I
it,
agree.
it could have easily been like it barely sold in PS5 because everyone went the other way, which just goes to show where the loyalties of people are in consoles. Other sales,
I'm I might be sympathetic for this specific thing because I had a roommate that was very big into baseball and could not play it
because
on
he
the
has an
systems
Xbox.
that he wanted. And I think almost like, I mean, it could be a correlation, not causation, but a lot more sports fans usually have an Xbox
Yes,
rather than a
Madden.
PlayStation.
Yeah, like
Um,
Madden has been, especially in the US,
yeah,
a sport game like Madden has tend to side with Xbox more often than not. Even though like the more popular sports game FIFA or
yeah,
NBA 2K have sided with PlayStation,
right.
but yeah, like something like Madden has been more to the hip with Xbox more than usual.
And with like no alternatives really on Microsoft's version. They had one that was a baseball game, but I can't remember what it was
RBI
called.
baseball.
Yeah, but it just apparently it wasn't nearly as good,
Oh
and the
no, and
show was like,
the show is like stratospheric in its quality. It's like
yeah,
people make the argument the show is the best sports game if anything, because NBA 2K used to have that title, but
yeah.
because they went deep down the rabbit hole of microtransactions,
We don't even have the
yeah,
time to talk about all that, but yeah,
yes,
I had another friend that actually he would put on MLB The Show in the background, put two AI teams to play each other, and he'd watch it like a regular baseball game.
wow, that's
It is
commitment.
the funniest thing I've ever seen. But
Yeah,
I was like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, I just put the game on." I was like, "That's MLB The Show. What are you watching?"
why are you not even playing?
Is the funniest thing I've ever seen because he's like, "Well, I got to get work done, and there's no games because of all the COVID stuff, so I made one
That
myself."
to be fair, there was no baseball season
Yeah.
during COVID, so
So that was
MLB
it.
doing
Was
that was fun.
the level of creativity some people can do just to get their fix. But that was just a funny random thing. Alejandro, go ahead and continue with those sales.
Yes, more sales. Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart that came out in June 11th, so it's only been a month and a half in the market, has already sold 1.1 million copies. And Returnal, the semi-niche roguelike game from the recently acquired Housemarque Games, has sold around 560,000 copies. Very interesting that they were very granular with how many copies Returnal has sold, because no mention about Demon Souls or Sackboy: A Big Adventure, like
Mm.
any sales at all. So if they were willing to say, "Oh yeah," did they just mention Returnal because they just bought Housemark?
I
Because
wonder.
because it's very strange for Sony because I know Sony likes to swing the big D whenever they sell a lot. Back like when Microsoft used to do it back in the 360 era, when they would sell a lot, they wouldn't wait to flaunt their numbers, just as Sony did with all their exclusives this year,
Here's my
this
theory.
generation.
For Returnal, games psychology side of it, when you hear that something is selling well, it makes you want to buy it.
Hmm.
So I think Returnal might not have been actually the best, but by saying, "Hey, look at how many sales we have,"
Since
it's
it
like,
means that you're proud
"Oh
that we're
shoot, yeah."
how it
Like
sold. So
they sold well. That means it must be good, and people that weren't going to buy it beforehand might
mhm.
actually pay attention to it now.
Yeah,
Same
maybe it's that
situation.
reverse psychology. Yeah.
Right. When Guilty Gear Strive, it came out with saying it sold 300,000 units. The sales numbers skyrocketed again because everyone said, "Oh shoot, people are playing this game. I'm going to buy it as well," and then it jumped up to 500,000 like in a week or something. Um, so I think that is something to do with it as well. Even though it's like you said, it's only 560,000. I mean, I say only, but compared to a lot of the others that they're going to hype up, that's kind of small.
Here's what makes me happy though. If they're happy, if they're willing to say that that Returnal sold that and they justify buying the studio for that, then that means that they're more willing to say that a game was a success without hitting million copies sold. Because
That's
it's
also
kind of
true.
like, yeah, because I think about this in the like for example what happened with the box office in like 2018 and 2019 with movies. They specifically Disney, everything that they released hit billions and billions and
Hmm.
billions and
And if it
billions,
wasn't a billion, it wasn't worth it.
which is like that's insane. That's insanity to me. That you
Yeah.
that that's the only way to measure a success, when just reaching a billion something was always an achievement by itself. And now that like then theaters got shut down and we're slowly seeing the return of the box office. Now like people are saying, oh, this movie made $330 million, like the Godzilla one, or things like that.
Yeah.
And now they're saying, yeah, that's like, we're happy with that. I'm like, thank you. Not everything has to be billions. So maybe this is a good sign for them, saying that, yeah, they can find success if they're not million sellers. At the same time, I also wonder how much the Demon Souls and Sackboy A Big Adventure sold if they were
Hmm.
not, if they didn't provide sales data for that. So interesting stuff. And also, in remember, there's 10 million PS5s out there.
Right.
Not everyone's buying all these games. So it's like, what are people playing on their
It's true.
PS5? Do they just really buy a PS5 just to keep playing their free to play stuff, their Call of Duties, and all that?
I think a
I,
lot of people did in the end because I didn't buy any of these games.
Mhm.
I still haven't gotten. I mean, I got Miles Morales. I got things like your Valhalla and your Watch
Mhm.
Dogs, but now I'm just playing games that were on PS4 that have gotten enhancements for PS5.
Yeah,
Um,
goes to sell. People may that I think the value of exclusive sometimes is overstated. Even though for me, like an exclusive, it's like one of the most exciting things about owning a machine, because it's what
yeah.
justifies the machine. So yeah, it's like the attach rate of this is also interesting, because then when you compare it to something like the exclusives that come out from Nintendo, the attach rate of those are insane.
Hmm.
But it can make sense. It's like people buy a Nintendo machine for those Nintendo games, so that's why the attach rate is so tight. Whereas in a PlayStation or an Xbox, there's so many kinds of games. They're not so reliant on you just getting the games exclusive for the machine. Those exclusives just makes the machine better. Like it just diversifies the portfolio and justifies why you would lean one way or another. So interesting stuff. It's like the closest one that I got is like 10 million PlayStation 5s were sold, 6.5 million copies of Miles Morales sold, and 5 to 1 were more through the PS5 than on PS4.
Hmm.
At least half of PS5 owners so far have Spider-Man. So you know that.
Part of that is because a lot of the PS5s came with Miles Morales.
But that's the thing. Like you would still came with bundles that, like the Miles Morales, you wouldn't buy the machine like, even if it came out with Miles Morales, it wasn't a 499 machine. It was like five something or even more. So
Right.
those sales would still
But then
count.
usually you would buy, you want one game with the system you purchase. So that's why I'm thinking like a lot of
Hmm.
people just like that's what I did. I just put Miles Morales and I got my system and like
Hmm.
an extra controller. And now I'm both glad that I have the extra controller and Miles Morales. But
Yes, I'm glad I have the extra controller too. It's like it's nice to not just have to. I can imagine if like, my controller would run out of battery and then having to plug it in, be like, well, now I can't play anything. It's always good to have two. So
yeah,
yeah, interesting numbers there. So number four, staying on the Sony news. Have you been wondering when you will be able to officially expand the storage of your PlayStation 5, Paul?
always.
Well, it appears it's going to happen soon. So, Sony officially announced that the next big firmware update is already in beta, and beta users can finally start testing different M2 SSD drives in the slot. However, big caveat: the beta also mentions that how not every M2 SSD drive in the market will work with the machine, and that some may even go as far as breaking the system if not to the specifications of the system. Specifically, if you buy a SSD drive at the size that they recommend you in these M2 drives, and it doesn't have a heatsink already in, it could literally melt your machine.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so until the thing is out of beta and Sony officially releases a list of third party drives that absolutely will work, no problem.
Mm.
If you get into the beta, buyer beware. So I didn't get into this beta. Usually you have to go to a website to be like, hey, I want to sign up for beta testing, the new systems and
Yeah, I'm
all
not
that.
gonna do
So
that.
so yeah, so let people break their SIP because that's the thing. The to upgrade the Xbox immediately when the Series X launched had a upgrade solution for memory, which was the
They
SSD cards that
were
you just
very
plug in.
easy.
The
I'm
thing
a
is that
little heated about that, but I'm also like, you know what? They
it's
knew what was gonna happen.
yeah, the thing is that they're proprietary. So that means that when you have proprietary cars, they tend to be more expensive and they usually takes a while before they go down in price. Sony going
Right.
for the more third party solution meant that there was going to be more options and the market dictates when those things go down in price.
You know, that's
So
what another thing that I'm thinking of just off the top of my head. The fact that they're going to openly rely on third party stuff is a big deal for them because you remember back in the day, if you opened that system, you were screwed
mhm.
and they would never touch your system again. But now, if they are asking you to, like, okay, well, you are going to have to go get your third party system, SSD, that means they have to open their warranty for the possibility of people doing that, right?
Yeah, the thing is that it depends because, like for example, the PS4 already had a slot in the that you could open. That wouldn't warrant you.
That, yeah.
That wouldn't void your warranty. But
But in order to fully take out the hard drive, the whole thing to actually fix it, I think there was a point that you had to do that.
yeah, but the thing is that the hard drive was never inside the machine where you have to like tear the machine out. It
That's
always had a
true. Hang
slot.
on.
It always had a slot at the top where you could only switch the drive. That was already built in, and that was
What
not
about
in
the
warranty.
Slim?
The
Those didn't have the top part, didn't they?
it had a way to switch the hard drive. They had it, I think it had it at the bottom, and it always had like
Okay.
when it comes to hard drives from the PS3 onwards, you changing the hard drive wouldn't void your warranty. It was if you opened it beyond the slot they allowed you to change the hard
Maybe
drive
it was
from.
the Pro
Yeah, I never had a Pro, so but that's the thing. The
because
Pro also had a slot. Every PlayStation device since PlayStation 3 onward
well,
had a slot that didn't warrant you. Didn't void your warranty.
so I had a specific problem that I had to pull off either the bottom or the top in order to mess with my internal hard drive. And I don't know if it was just a problem with like maybe the jack in port that I had to replace or something because
Yeah,
I'm kind of blanking out
yeah,
on it.
if it was something technical, yeah, that's when you have to let them do it. If you do it by yourself, you void it. But
Yeah.
the thing is, you changing the hard drive of anything that's already pre baked in into the machine for
Okay.
you
Well, that's
to
good at
open it, so
least.
it's not gonna void the warranty.
Yeah.
So my thing is that it feels like as good as it is the idea of having third party options for memory with the PS5, just the fact that the M2 drive there has to be a very specific M2 drive that's going to fit the bespoke nature of the SSD they built for the PS5, so that you have to have one that's as close as possible to the specifications of how quick the
Yeah.
PS5 runs. That's too technical. That's way too technical of a jargon for the normal consumer that wants more memory to like have to
Definitely.
look that up and all of that. It's like it just feels too obtuse.
Not to
So
mention the process for PS4 switching internal hard drives was an absolute nightmare because you couldn't just switch it out. You
no,
had
you
to
had
like
to like
have the
download,
special
yeah.
cable, you had to have the download, you had to have the
Not really.
USB.
Yeah, and you didn't need a special cable. You just needed a USB and go to the website, download the firmware, and make a folder specifically. Have to turn this PS5 in a specific way in safe mode with the with the stick having the specific data of the firmware in a very
Hmm.
specific order and folder
Yep.
for the PS5 4 to read it. Before, so
It was. I'm so glad I
complicated.
only had to do that once,
Yeah.
but it was an absolute horrendous process that I don't wish on anyone.
Yes. So the good thing is because the PS5 already had an empty slot. You just have to put in the thing and that's it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, buyer beware. Wait until Sony gives you a specific list of like this is the name of a drive that you can buy before you buy one. Whenever this firmware goes live. Also, speaking about this firmware, they are also adding a couple of UI improvements. And to me, the most notable one is for what they're doing with trophies, as
Oh.
they're redesigning the trophy layout currently in the system. By the way,
Oh, thank God.
trophies in PS5 suck.
Yeah.
I like the is it horizontal? Yeah, the
Yep.
horizontal squares is like a complete nightmare
Yeah.
because it's
You,
like
you can
doesn't
no
give you
longer
enough.
see the menu. You have to see like a giant square that takes up like this much space, and then just keep flipping through to find what you're looking for,
Yeah,
and then
and
you
it
have to
doesn't give.
click on it
And you have to
to
click on
get the
it
description.
to get the full description. So it's like they showed pictures that they're taking it back into how it looked in PS4, which was like the
That's good.
list. But and it looks better. It looks like cleaner. They add a little bit more stuff to it. So I'm glad for that because I'm a big trophy hunter. So what they did
Hmm.
with trophies for PS5, I couldn't believe it. But they're fixing it now, and I'm glad they're fixing it within the year. So
Amen to that.
yeah,
What's next?
number 5. We're ending the Sony news on a down note. Reports surfaced from reliable sources, this being Jeff Grubb from VentureBeat and Jason Schreier from Bloomberg, that Sony may have pulled the trigger and delayed Horizon Forbidden West out of the 2021 holiday season.
I'm sure
Wah,
this must
wah.
hurt your soul so
Yes.
much right now.
Yeah, even though I'll get more into that. Even though SIE Worldwide Studios president Herman Hulse had said previously, back in June, that the game was on track for the holiday season, he had also inferred in that same PlayStation blog interview that they would be willing to push back the title if it meant better health for the dev team. So they were always like, "We're on track. We think we can release it this year, but if it compromises the quality of the game or the health of our dev team, we have the option to push." So while Sony hasn't so here's the thing: while Sony hasn't officially announced the delay themselves, considering the sources, it's just a matter of time of where and when.
Hmm.
Considering we're still waiting for the official Sony conference where they'll talk more about their first party offerings. We're in August, Paul, and we still don't know.
I know,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, which they promised was later this summer when they announced in the last state of play. Chances are that that's when we'll hear the official date. Horizon Zero Dawn faced a similar situation 5 years ago when the nebulously promised
Hmm.
2016 holiday release then slipped into a solid February 28, 2017 release date. So if history repeats itself, you have an idea of where the sequel may land in the release calendar. Paul, the PlayStation has no games for this holiday.
It doesn't.
Like at all. Nothing
Nothing
announced.
exclusive.
Yes.
That's for sure.
Just Deathloop. Early in September.
Yep.
And the final one was Death Stranding Director's Cut, but that's a re-release. Ghost of Tsushima and Death Stranding the Director's Cut don't count. They are already released games that they're just giving special editions.
And
They
they're
only have
gonna.
Deathloop.
Oh,
It's like somehow history repeats itself. Not only they sell 10 million units around close to the same time they released in PS4. The PS4 had no games for the holiday of 2014, like at all. They literally relied on Destiny 1 as their
yep.
first party offering. They promoted the crap out of Destiny 1 because they had the marketing partnership with them, and they even literally said on interviews, "We consider Destiny a first party, like we're giving it a treatment of a
Hmm.
first party." That's all they had for that holiday. They had smaller games like Drive Club and Little Big Planet 3, which, by the way, those games launched busted because 2014 was a year where every game that launched that holiday season was busted somehow. Assassin's Creed Unity, Halo Master Chief Collection, um,
Oh, I
and
forgot about the
and
Master
a little
Chief
bit,
Collection.
yeah, that was that
Shoot.
holiday. Yeah,
Yeah.
the 2014 holiday, it was like the holiday of the effed up releases. So
Hmm.
the PS4 really didn't have anything, and the only thing, the small things that were not marquee titles, because The Order 1886, which was one of their big ones, got pushed to February, and that
I
game sucked.
still think about that game and how it could have been
Great. Oh yes,
fantastic,
it could have been an amazing
and it
series.
still looks so good.
Yeah, I wish it
Oh
was an actual good game that didn't last 5 hours. And
gosh,
so yeah, it's like funny enough. It's like they started sort of changing their narrative around 2017, but from 2014 to 2016, the PS4 literally had no games in the
yeah.
holiday, like at all. Is this gonna happen again for them?
Unless they eventually pull out that fabled press conference and then suddenly
Mhm.
say, "Oh, look, there's this thing that's going to come out this year." Actually,
Yeah, and that's the thing is like that rarely happens with Sony.
I know.
It's like the only like literally the only time that they pulled this and worked was Miles Morales and Demon Souls and Sackboy, and that was because it was a launch year and they had to launch software.
Yeah,
But it's rare for Sony to come to a conference, announce something that's out that same holiday. That's not
right.
their MO. They're all about the long term things. I trust Microsoft to do more. This is what's coming out this year than, or even I think Nintendo out of all of them because they apparently they cook so many cakes. They put them in the fridge and then they just like take them out of the fridge to be able to
Yep.
sell it. It's like I trust Nintendo more to do that kind of thing than
Hmm.
Sony. I would be, and especially because Sony, because you can understand the workflow of what are the first party studios from Sony. When did this studio come out? It's like, okay, so this studio hasn't gone, so maybe they have something for this. Maybe they're or like Naughty Dog. We're not gonna see anything from Naughty Dog in a long while. Like
Yeah.
Gorilla and Santa Monica, God of War and Horizon. We already know they're 2022 games now. And well, we know of God of War. Sony has to officially say it, but here's the thing: when Jason Schreier says he's heard that it's been delayed, it's been delayed.
Mm.
It happened with No Man's Sky. It happened with Final Fantasy 15. He broke those stories. Everyone sent him death threats for reporting the stories, and they turned out correct back in like
Yeah.
2016. So when he says it, it happens. So that's why I said
Mhm.
like this is some. This is not like Sony is just about waiting for them to say now because I feel like when they announce it, they're gonna be like, no, we're excited to announce the release date, and then they're gonna say like, it's like Kingdom Hearts. I remember that was gonna be a holiday 2018 game, and then suddenly at a concert, they're like, we're excited to announce a release date of January 29, 2019. I was like, wait, you said you're not gonna delay it?
Yeah.
We're sorry. So um, they're gonna do it like that because when you hear a
Yeah.
delay, you want to at least hear something solid. So at the very least, now we know that.
Right.
But for this holiday, if you're in the fence and you want to buy something that's gonna have new stuff releasing at the time, buy an Xbox. Absolutely buy an Xbox. Halo's gonna be there. So yeah, so like buy an Xbox. Like I have the PS5. I love the PS5, but the Xbox just
Yeah.
has a lineup for themselves. It's like just with Halo and Forza Horizon 5, they have something for the holiday. Unless you
But
love PlayStation so much that you just
doesn't
want to
that
play.
line up into our last thing? Actually.
Yes. So yeah, number six, Halo Infinite, the big flagship Xbox Series X and S title that slipped from launch last year into an undetermined time this coming holiday, released its technical test, aka beta, this past weekend. They didn't call it beta because I'm glad they didn't, because when you're this close to release,
Yeah.
you can't call something a beta, it's a demo.
Or at least
So
you shouldn't.
yeah, you shouldn't. They use it, everyone throws the word beta around because I don't know. It sounds better than demo,
Hmm.
even though what they are is demo. Because if you're in beta, you're still in active development to actually change stuff. So, so they released that technical test this past weekend, and the response to the game's multiplayer so far has been mostly positive. Have you seen videos of the multiplayer, Paul? Like everyone, like
A
shares it.
very tiny amount, which looked great, but
It looks fun.
apparently some of this is news to me. So tell me what we're
Yes,
talking about here.
yeah. So, however, not everything was smooth sailing for the game this past weekend. According to longtime Halo director Joseph Staten, who, if you remember, was vital during the Bungie era of Halo as the main writer, and was brought in to help push Halo Infinite out the door after the calamitous 2020 rollout of the game that led to the delay and the departure of Chris Lee, the game's director. That was before that. Uh, Joseph Staten mentioned within the technical test files of the PC version includes files that basically spoil the entirety of the game's story campaign, as well as include files about the existence of a possible battle royale mode for the game. Halo
This
Battle
is
Royale, Paul.
amazing. This is just amazing, honestly.
Yes.
Um, I uh, I don't want to be the blind optimist, but Halo Battle Royale, I can't lie, does sound very entertaining because if you want to really break it down, Halo's gameplay loop has always been you drop with hardly anything and you pick up stuff throughout the game
hmm
that gives you an edge against everyone else. It's
It's a
just been on a
sandbox
very
gameplay. It's a
yeah.
sandbox of picking stuff.
So the idea of okay, well, you're going to drop a bunch of Spartans into a zone to have them fight each other to get to the center honestly sounds like a very Halo thing to do.
hmm
Um, and especially with the grappling hooks now,
hmm
and the vehicles and everything, you could probably just drop into a map and have happen. Sounds amazing. I wish I didn't hate battle royales at this point,
hmm
um, because that I
I'm so
picture in
tired
my
of them. I'm
head
just so tired of them.
all of the horrible things that can happen with this. And I also wish that it was going to be more of a desire for me to try it because I'm probably going to suck. Probably won't want to play it very much.
Yeah. To be fair with Halo Infinite, they have so many modes, not battle royale, that there's enough there for to satiate your multiplayer competitive side.
Yeah.
If you just don't want the one death, you're out of a battle royale. It's cool. Like if that's in the files, it means that they basically spoiled the last minute reveal. It. What's funny is that this happened to Warzone. The PC version of Warzone, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, included files that leaked the existence of Warzone. Warzone wasn't announced
Huh.
when Modern Warfare released in 2019.
I would think everyone kind of expected it because they rolled it out initially in Black Ops 4 for a
Yeah,
battle
with
royale
Blackout.
mode.
Yeah, with Blackout.
Um, and I knew it was very popular because a lot of people were playing it. And I was like,
So
okay, good
actually,
for
Blackout
them.
wasn't popular. Blackout died really quick
Hmm.
because it was the only battle royale you could only play with through full price.
Oh, that's
So it
right.
entered the market dominated by Fortnite. That was they wanted to get the Fortnite pie,
Yeah.
but because they tied it to the purchase of Black Ops
Hmm.
4,
Nobody bought
that
it.
yeah no, yeah like Blackout as a mode was fun. It was interesting to see Call of Duty actually switch into a battle royale format after the enclosed areas of Call of Duty has always what defined that gameplay, and that was the
Yeah.
first time they threw it out into a huge big ass map. And it was interesting that they made it work, but unfortunately, because of how you had to purchase it, no one cared. Especially because that Black Ops 4 died really quickly. It died in the vine. So so yeah, it's like I wonder if like that's the thing's got that same thing's gonna happen with Halo Infinite that right now it has the advantage that already the multiplayer is free to play. You don't even
Right.
need Game Pass for it. So they already have that leg to stand on. It's gonna be a hugely popular game on PC and Xbox systems just for it being free to play. No need for Xbox Live Gold or all of that crap. So it already has enough modes: Slayer, like Team Deathmatch, Capture the Flag, Halo staples.
Hmm.
A battle royale on top of that is just a way to like. I feel it's a good way to court in the crowd. It's like because as much as I hate that knowing that little kids right now have been raised with Fortnite.
I
That
know.
that's like the game for them, or even like Warzone. I hate that that's what gaming is to them, and that hurts my soul.
Yeah.
So I am glad that they at least have this, but I always stand by the idea that eventually you get bored of something, and if at least all these other modes are available for you to play on top of that, it's a fishing rod. Here's the hook coming in. We have all this stuff. Maybe they try it. Oh, we like this even better than the other thing. Boom, pass.
Yeah.
So I think the more sad thing about this leak is the campaign.
Yeah,
Yeah, like more than the battle royale itself because
I would
it
say I don't need to experience the Halo story as it's told. Like I could have somebody tell me, I think, because I'm so removed from it now that like I don't even really remember what happened in the fifth game.
it's
But
good that you don't.
yeah,
It was awful.
apparently it was, and like nothing actually happened out of it. But I think that if somebody sat me down and said, "All right, here's what's going on with Halo Infinite," I'm going to be like, "All right, cool."
Yeah. Halo 5 was such a disappointment in the story department because I thought Halo always had good stories, good lore. Not the
Yeah,
best written, but they had enough good story within them to push you through. And Halo 5 story was such a mess. They miscalculated so heavily on what people really liked about Halo.
yeah,
Specifically, the biggest crime was what they did with Master Chief.
yeah,
They what's funny is that Halo 5 wanted to mirror Halo 2 so much in its campaign, but completely got the balance wrong.
yeah.
Like Halo 2 was notorious for being one of those bait and switch games where here's Master Chief, but no, you're also playing as the Arbiter.
Hmm.
So it was like yeah, just like Metal Gear Solid 2 with Raiden, and Last of Us Part 2 with Abby, and then Halo 2 was like at the very least the balance was that you played enough of Chief and you played enough with Arbiter. You kept bouncing
Yeah.
back and
It
forth.
was like half and half, I
It
think.
was yes, and then where it miscalculated was that the final mission of Halo 2 was an Arbiter mission.
Right.
So that's where like the big criticism towards Halo 2 came in this campaign because they gave you they gave you a final Arbiter mission and the final mission of that game got cut because then it became Halo 3 because the
Uh,
whole finish the fight thing was something that they wanted to do within Halo 2 but they ran out of time, so
mhm.
that got punted into Halo 3. That's why like it ended with the finishing this fight scene,
Which makes
and it
sense
and it just
why.
cut to black. It was like
Yeah.
Halo 2's ending is like one of the most legendary disappointments in gaming history because it was like
I am
they
still
had to
so
cut.
confused, like everything that happens in that game because it feels like you have the first half, which is like, okay, we're building to something, and then all of a sudden there's just like the grave
The
mind
grave
and
mind,
all
yeah.
that. And I'm like, who is this?
Yes.
What is going on?
Yeah, the
Oh
thing is
man,
that then they took Halo 2's criticism of overcomplication to heart, that then they made Halo 3 story much more simple because they just centered you on Chief
and it's
that
one of my
time. And
favorites, if not
yeah,
my favorite.
so oh, I love Halo 3. Halo 3's campaign is my favorite.
Yeah.
uh, then comes Reach. But yeah, then Halo 5, it was like, yeah, let's do the dual story. We're going to have 15 missions in this game. And guess what? 12 of them are going to be played as Captain Locke. Only 3 of them are going to be played as Master Chief. How in the F? How couldn't you do 8 and 7? 8 with Locke and 7 with Chief at the very least.
Yeah.
Or 8 with Chief and 7 with Locke. How in the world you thought that it was going to be okay for you to play a Halo game where the majority of your time you're playing as Fireteam Osiris with Captain Locke, a character that's a wet blanket, even more so than the already wet blanket Master Chief, that at least was popular because he was Master Chief.
Right.
So that campaign was
Yes.
like it was fun to play. It was
Yeah.
beautiful. It had great mechanics and all. It had good co-op. It was fun to play co-op, but it miscalculated with its story and its
And I
focus.
liked some of the characters, honestly.
Yeah,
Um,
Nathan Fillion was still
especially
there.
like Nathan Fillion stand out for Team Osiris for sure, but
Mhm.
like all of Chief's team was
Yeah,
characters from
from
different
Reach.
Halo books,
Yeah,
even.
from the Fallen Reach.
Um,
Kelly,
right, and Linda, and I can't remember the
from
last
Fred.
one,
I think
Fred.
Fred. Yeah,
But like they were all very heavily shown in all of the book material before everything, and even
and that was another miscalculation from 343. They introduced those characters and assumed you already knew them
yeah,
if
that
you
was
read
the
the
crazy
books.
thing because
Yeah,
even I, who read the books, was like, "How did I know them again? Like they were in one of these. I don't remember how
yeah,
and how they survived, but they're just here now."
yeah. The worst kind of storytelling you can have is just assuming that your reader
Mm,
or viewer or player has already done their homework
yeah,
with something else for this to work. Your story always have to supplemental material should enrich, not not like what was the word I'm thinking? It's like
Not
that should
take
be
the place
essential,
of.
not take a place of
Yeah.
actual storytelling. So that started happening with Halo 4 when they released Forward Until Dawn, the films and all that.
Oh yeah.
They started going down that rabbit hole, and then they fully went that rabbit hole into five, and that was a big mistake on
Yeah.
top of on top of their lack of focus on the things that matter. That they were planning on making a Halo 6 to come out in 2018. They had it written, they had it pre-planned. Halo's 5 reception of the campaign was such, it damaged the campaign reputation of Halo to such an extent that they had to go back to the drawing board.
Good.
And that's why we got Infinite. That's why it's taken 6 years, a 6 year gap between Halos,
I hope they
possibly
at
seven,
least
because we still don't
mention,
have. Yeah,
like, yeah, I hope they at least wrap up a couple plot threads from that as while they're going through Infinite. But
yeah.
because one thing
They
I don't
mentioned.
like is when they just disregard everything. Looking at you, Rise of
Yeah, Rise of Skywalker
Skywalker.
from the Last Jedi. Yeah, literally.
um,
Yeah,
that's one of like the biggest problems. Is like at least fix the problems that were created. Don't just ignore them.
yeah. They mentioned they paid lip service that the events of Halo 5 did happen,
Okay,
but they also mentioned, yeah, we're building from the events of Halo 5, but we're going on a new direction with the story.
good.
And I'm like, okay, at the very least, you're acknowledging that happened. I want to see how that happens. I can kind of piece together what may have happened
Yeah,
with just based on the trailers, that I can see some continuation from Halo 5 here, because at the end of Halo 5, Cortana goes rampant and completely goes batshit crazy, and like all the AIs of all the things start getting like activated with Guardian stuff and all that. When we see Halo, the first thing we saw of Halo Infinite was Master Chief floating in space and found by that bearded dude.
yeah,
So I can assume maybe Master Chief took the word to Cortana and something happened, and then he was left floating in space.
right.
Maybe that's what happened.
Who
I
knows?
haven't read the leaks, by the way, so I'm not
Yeah,
spoiling anything. So
this
this
is
is just
all
this is all
conjecture.
conjecture. So that's what makes it sad that now the files are out there, because the campaign out of everything is the thing that needs to prove again that Halo can be great again.
Yeah,
Like that Halo can be like respected from its campaign. It was sad that Infinite last year had a good idea, but because of its lack of polish and the meme-worthy Craig brute, that some I don't understand how were they able. Like, if you look at the demo,
yeah,
at no point you see like the face of the brute. Somehow, someone managed to like go frame by frame,
right.
find the time when he melee and have the completely indifferent brute. So
Who was out there noticing that one tiny detail to bring it to light
yeah,
anyway? But I will say, like, even though a lot of people were saying, "Oh, that's one detail in motion and all," it's like, but at the same time, that's still an asset that is not up to modern
yeah.
standards. And even then, we were saying like, "Oh, well, that was kind of cool of a Halo Infinite presentation, but it kind of felt weird, didn't it?
Yes, I was
Something didn't
like,
feel right."
yeah, I was like, I'm excited for it, but I was like, it does something feel off? That's what I
Yeah.
said. It's like it's just, and then I started seeing the screenshots. I was like,
Mm. Yeah,
oh,
the textures are
the
not
textures. Oof,
right.
this looks like a 360 game. Like,
Yeah.
is there something wrong here? At least it doesn't look like that anymore. They put the work.
Yeah, I'm glad for
So,
that, and I want to give them the benefit of the doubt because everything that's in progress is always like, okay, yeah, there's going to be improvement. So it's kind of a shame that it got demonized to that extent. But
mhm. If it hadn't, they probably launched it, and it would have launched not with great reviews, and they couldn't
yeah,
afford that. So
so I'm
it.
glad that they got caught now and
Mhm.
saying, okay, guys, we're gonna make sure we put some effort into
And to
this
be
now.
fair, like I mentioned, it's like I saw almost close to universal positive response to the technical test, in a
Which is
way that I
great.
was like,
I'm
oh
glad.
man, that's glad. I'm glad, because that's another one of those like series that I'm rooting for, because it's so entrenched into gaming culture, or what gaming meant, or what our first be like. If it wasn't for Halo, we wouldn't have shooters like we have now. They set the template for console shooters
They did.
back in '01. So it's like I always fear about like that kind of series like losing its relevance. Kind of like how what happened with Zelda, that by the time Skyward Sword came out
Yeah.
and it was like so tepidly received, and back in the Wii era, there was like, can Zelda ever be big again? And then Breath of the Wild changed things.
They said, hold my beer.
Yeah, hold on
I
here,
got
and I
this.
got this. And obviously they changed stuff that, and me as a Zelda purist, didn't agree with, but
Yeah.
they made enough of an impact with the things that they innovated and improved upon, just the Zelda as a name, that then Zelda became relevant again, a big name.
And then
So
once again, almost even more of an important thing than Zelda being big again was everyone else started copying things again and innovating and
mhm.
improving on everything that Zelda did
Yeah, we see so
for
much of
Zelda
Breath of
to
the
once
yeah.
again copy off of them and
Now we
then
see so
create
much
something else.
we see so much Breath of the Wild now and everywhere. It's so funny. It's like we see it now. It's like, oh, here
And
it
I'm not
is.
even really mad about it
No,
anymore
me neither,
because
because the things that make Zelda Breath of the Wild an incredible game of the year, best game of the generation kind of things, are the things that don't make it a Zelda game. It's that the innovations it made for open world design
yeah,
and its innovations for exploration and discovery and sense of adventure and physics based design
shenanigans.
and shenanigans and all of that. It's like that's the thing that make that game sing. As a
Yeah,
Zelda game, I'd say it's pretty terrible. Like the things I like about Zelda, like its dungeons and all
from
of
a
that. But
purity
from
standpoint,
purity,
yeah.
but that's just me. For some people were already done with that purity, so that's why that game hits for so many people.
Right.
And that's kind of what I don't think from what I've seen, Halo Infinite is the reinvention of Halo I would have probably expected after 6 years. But I think I would settle for a pretty really good Halo because the market has been saturated by battle royales and this other free to play garbage and the things
Hmm.
that we just keep getting. That I feel like something more traditional like Halo can launch now and be like, oh, this is nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's Halo Infinite, still on track for holiday 2021.
We're
We need
hoping.
a we need a release date now. We need it like ASAP because if not, there's always the fear that it might slip at the last minute. And I want Halo to release this year because I want something to be excited for this holiday in an exclusive
Something to
capacity.
play.
That's not just Metroid Dread on the
Yeah.
Switch. And more importantly, this is the 20th anniversary of the Xbox brand, which in turn is the 20th anniversary of
Oh,
Halo.
yeah.
You gotta hit this year to synergize with the
They
20.
gotta
Look, yeah,
try.
they gotta try, but hey, it's COVID times. If they
Yeah.
can't, it's like, you know what? It's like my desires can't overstep the health of the team. I mean, as sad
Yeah,
as I'm,
even though it feels like a corporate response to say, "Oh, guys, don't push us. It's because of the health of the team." It's like I know some of that could be a cop out, but I also know that it's a very important thing to actually care about the health of the team. So if that is actually going to help them, I say yes,
yes,
delay.
let me put it like this: we don't need a Cyberpunk 2077 situation ever again in our lives. So
Yeah,
take your time, but
I
please,
agree.
like like with Halo, they were gonna launch. So at some point, they were already kind of content complete. I had an idea what they wanted, so they got an extra year for polish. So I might as well be like, you gotta be at least on track for this year at the very least. So you were a launch title, so you're a freaking launch title, and try to synergize because if they're able to synergize with the anniversary, that's gonna be great for them because it's a celebration of their platform, a
Absolutely.
celebration of the game that made that platform. Without Halo, there's no Xbox. Simple as that.
Agreed.
So that's the end of the news, Paul. Chunky.
That was chunky, man. That we
Yes.
had some chunky frickin' Campbell's soup out here.
Yes. Paul,
Whew.
where can people find you?
As always, Twitter at Dork of Art, YouTube at Dork of Art, and Twitch at AngelSword21. Alejandro, where can they find you?
They can find me at twitch.tv/slash the Slayer Giant. They can find me at Twitter at A_Segovia. They can find me at Instagram at Alejandro Segovia 93. And they can also find me at thecriticalcorner.com where I have started reviewing some stuff. Like recently I reviewed the seventh season of The Flash. And that was a fun
Apparently, that was
escaping.
a popular and interesting situation that you did.
Yes, it was a more popular review than I expected because I feel I filled the void. IGN used to review seasons for the show; they didn't review this one, so I was like, I'll slip in. I'm gonna pop up and see if
Fine, I'll do it
if I'm there.
myself.
And also, just as a final thing, I kind of want to give a recommendation to a podcast that I've been listening. It's called the Iron Lords podcast. I linked you something at Twitter.
I
It
watched it
was
and made me
hilarious.
very happy.
That's like that podcast is goals. Those are friends, just like
Yeah.
friendly jabs at each other, like talking about games and all that. There's like some fun stuff there.
I had some friends like that in high school and college that I actually live with, and those conversations like give you life. So I
Yes.
definitely want to check out one of their episodes.
Yes. They're long. They're very long. So you have to
Are
have the
they?
respect. Yes. Because they just go forever because they're just friends talking. But
Yeah.
it's like they're so fun. They have people from everywhere, like a very popular podcast hosts from different shows that I listen. They have them there. They
Oh
get
wow,
some really great discussions, and they're really great mediators. They have had people that disagree with each other, like
that's the
vehemently,
good
and have
part.
them within the show because they create such a great environment for like discussion. They're open. We're living in an era where everyone's demonized for not agreeing with each other and all that, and it's really great to see these dudes that have such a great fun vibe. They can troll it. There's like this dude named the black dude with the glasses, King. He's
Yeah.
such an he's an Xbox fanboy, and he just embraces it,
Oh
and like
man.
he just sticks in that like Xbox personality, but it's endearing in a way. It's like I can't quite hate him for it. Just like look what how he made Hip Hop Gamer, another part,
Yeah.
just pop at him. That was so funny. Yeah, I was like, eventually someday we'll have more hosts and we can have just as much fun as those guys have.
I
They follow me on
absolutely
Twitter,
so.
by the way.
Really?
The Lords follow me,
That's awesome.
so maybe one day in the future, maybe we can have one
Shout
of them.
out.
Yes. Just shout out to the Lords. So,
Oh man.
Paul, it's been fun. So until next time,
Press X.
to play.
Adios, everyone.
Adios.